All right, so a couple of weeks ago on the community tab part of my channel here, I posted a couple of pictures of a skeleton that was found in the woods of Arkansas about, what, early 90s?
It's like probably on
93 or so. And I said I was going to do an interview with a fella that had actually seen and put hands on this skeleton back then. And I'm with him at his house right now going to do this interview. And this is my good friend Steve Littlefield, who is also the guitar teacher at my shop. So if any of y'all out there need guitar lessons, give me a holler. We can set you up. And you know, last year at this time, Steve and I were working on another project. We had a Black Sabbath tribute band that we were doing, and we were staying pretty hooked up. Put it together just for fun. Turned out everybody wanted to hear it, and we still get requests. So, you know, that's good to know. But anyway, back to this. Steve and I have been friends for, gosh, what, 25 plus years, something like that. And back in the late 90s, which brought this to my attention, Steve told me about a skeleton that a person he knew over at Stratford, Oklahoma, had in a bucket of formaldehyde. And he explained and tried to describe this skeleton to me because they didn't know what it was. And so fast forward to now, I've located some pictures of that skeleton, and y'all seen that. I posted that on there. So I'm going to talk to Steve a little bit about how he came about seeing this unidentified. I'm not even going to guess. I've tried to compare it to skeletons of mountain lion, llama, hyena, all these things, and it's just not a match. So, Steve, how did you come about when you got to see this?
Like I said, this was probably about maybe 1993, 94. I don't remember exactly what year, but I lived and worked in Stratford at a Conoco station, and there was a guy that used to come in. He actually lived like right across the street, and I cannot remember the guy's name. It's been that long ago. Anyway, he came in and asked me he said he heard I was an artist, and you know, could I draw, you know, something. And I said, well, what do you want drawn? And he said, well, this friend of mine has this thing that he found in the woods when he was deer hunting, and he's kept it in a bucket of formaldehyde. It's unidentified, and he was kind of coming at it like it could be an alien, you know. And of course, you know, I dig all this kind of stuff, but I was a little skeptical. And so anyway, a couple of days later, I went over, and sure enough, he had this thing in a bucket of formaldehyde. I put gloves on, I held it, I looked at it. He was describing things about it that he'd learned from his friend, who was basically letting him store it at his house. But there's a lot of backstory behind things that had happened and how it ended up at his house. And he was basically wanting me to do sketches of it to see, like, my educated, non-educated guess on what it looked like when it was alive. And when I saw this thing, I was speechless at first. I was like, this guy was for real. So,
what was your first one? First of all, if y'all can, of course, you could go on the community part of this, and I'll leave a link to it down in the description. And please do read the description on this video. First, I'll leave the link. And here's one of the pictures that is in my community tab. And I asked Steve, I said, how long was this part of the, from head to hip bones, about how long?
I'd say it was probably about 2.5 feet, maybe 3 feet. I mean, when you lifted it up, because it was kind of curled. Mm-hmm. But if you picked it up and held it by the pelvis and straightened it up, I'd say from the top of the skull to the bottom of the pelvis might have been about yay long, 3 feet maybe, is what I'm guessing.
So looking at it that way, you know, you can kind of use your imagination. If it was bipedal, quadrupedal, whatever. I mean, we don't know. From what I understand, there was not any legs or arms on it.
No.
Correct?
Right.
So it was the skull, which was missing, the lower jaw.
The mandible was gone. The front part of the palate under the nose was missing. It just had molars on each side.
Okay. Now, what Steve has drawn some recreations of the teeth, in its head. And they're really peculiar, and I'll have him describe that. Because like we said earlier, Steve is an artist. He makes his living not only giving guitar lessons there at my store, but he's also a tattoo artist, and this guy can draw anything.
Well, this is a very, very rough thing. I just did this with a ballpoint pen. I'm trying to remember, I think it was 3 or 4 on each side. I can't remember for sure. But from the side, they look like this. As you can see, they had these little, very sharp spikes on the very outside edge. And this little ridge here, when you look at it from the bottom, and again, these were molars. This is where the spikes are. And then in the middle of the molar, it was hollowed out except for this ridge line right here, which is what this piece is. You know, I've seen a lot of animal teeth. I've never seen anything like this. That was probably the thing that stood out the most to me. So I'll try to get that up there. But there were other elements to this creature, whatever it was, that really stood out. It had a fish fin on its back.
When you say fish fin, describe what you mean. But let me throw this in first, okay? The picture of the skeleton that I'm showing you here, this come from a book called True Treasure Stories of the Southwest by an author named William White. And he got the story from another book called Follow the Signs. These are treasure hunting books, and that one's by a guy named Dane Chastain. But these pictures here were taken in 2001 in a place in Sunset, Texas called the Jack Glover's Old West Museum, which it's not there anymore. But when these pictures were taken, there was no flesh left on it. It's just bone. Now, when you saw it, there was still
a lot of cartilage and flesh. It was like a greenish gray color. And the gentleman, like I said, I cannot remember his name, was telling me things, kind of filling me in on it. But as I was examining it, he pointed out some things, and there was a fish fin kind of, below the vertebrae on the neck, closer to the back, that was probably about, say, 3 to 4 inches long, and maybe at its peak was about an inch, maybe a little longer, and it looked like a fin you would see on like a bass or a fish. And another element was there were stubble, little patches, because like I said, it was pretty much a lot of the flesh was gone, but there was little spots of tufts of hair that were probably 1/16 of an inch long that looked like brass wire. You could run your finger across it and it felt like a wire when you cut it. It was weird.
But it was
really strange.
Definitely a type of hair.
It looked like as it was, it wasn't a lot of it, just little patches, but yeah, it was hair.
Okay. Well, that fish don't have hair.
Right.
So now when you say, I'm very descriptive on this, I know you as well, but when you say like a fish's fin, was it fixed or was it movable? Or?
It was pretty fixed. I mean, you could kind of take your finger and make it kind of move a little bit, but I mean, like I said, at the tallest point, it was only about 1.5 inches wide, and then it would taper down to both ends. So it was a fish fin, but it wasn't like a large protruding fin. So,
okay. So was there any of the skin still left on it?
No, it was really mostly cartilage. Still kind of holding on to especially around the rib cage area. There was a lot of cartilage. The pictures that you have here, it's pretty close. But I mean, even though those pictures were taken from the internet,
yeah.
But it didn't look as like a clean skeleton like that does.
Right. Well, this is years after the fact.
Yeah, exactly.
If that was 2001 and you saw it in...
It was like 93.
93 or
yeah.
somewhere in there.
I mean, it was pretty, what's the word I'm looking for? It was pretty far gone by then, but not quite as bad as that.
So is there any remnants of legs or arms at all left? No, so there's nothing there. So pretty much
what you see
like
there,
just with
a little bit of flesh and cartilage on it. Yeah.
Okay. Now the story, from what I understand, is there was a guy deer hunting in Arkansas, come across this and brought it back, and it ended up in the hand. Now, was the person that had it here, was he the one that found it?
No, the gentleman in Stratford that I talked to it was at his house. And the gentleman that I never caught his name either. The gentleman that found this had literally ran across it in the daylight and like looked at it, examined it, thought it was weird, loaded up, and was coming back to Oklahoma. And for some reason it bugged him, and he went back and found it, and then brought it back to Oklahoma.
Another interesting part of this that I wasn't aware of till we talked earlier. Of course, Steve brought this to my attention back in the late 90s, and because he knew I was into, the cryptids and such as that. And he said, well, here's something really neat. And back then, you could go on the internet, and there was a couple of sites in the late 90s that you could find this. Right now, it took me forever to find these, and it was only in book reviews on treasure hunting. Mm-hmm. Now, I'd had a couple of people in the comments on the pictures that I posted before say that they had heard of this. Now, if anybody has any information, we're not saying what we think it is. Right now, we're just, as far as we know, unidentified. If anybody has information that this mystery was ever solved, be sure and let us know in the comments. But it's, to my knowledge, it never has. But Steve's, what was it about a TV show? And
okay, so without the rundown on it, after I saw this thing, I was like, dude, really, like, what is the story behind this? Because, like I said, when he told me about it, I was like skeptical. So apparently, this gentleman, this friend of his that found it, had not only had he taken it and sent it to different universities so that they could possibly give an answer to what it is. And again, a lot of it's a llama, it's not a llama, we don't know what it is. So he'd sent it around, and he had contacted Unsolved Mysteries. And again, this is hearsay. Contacted Unsolved Mysteries. They sent some people down from the show. He took them to the area where he had found this, and apparently there were some military personnel that showed up while they were walking around out in this brush or wherever it was, and told them they needed to leave, and that was kind of the end of that. So okay. Yeah.
So there is the books that I mentioned, and you can get these on Amazon if you look them up. The one is True Treasure Stories of the Southwest by an author named William H. White. And when I searched that, I found these pictures in the review, and it actually gives the story of that and them sending it to universities and such as that. So part about the military personnel or whatever, that is not something we both know firsthand. That is secondhand information. We're throwing that out there in the hopes that if someone else is watching this and has further information about this, that you would contact me, either put in the comments or send me an email at bigfootandmore@yahoo.com, and let me know, if you've got any extra information. Because to my knowledge, this skeleton disappeared. It might have disappeared simply because somebody saw it and said, "Oh, that's it," and threw it away, or it might have disappeared for a different reason. We don't know. In the stories in the treasure hunting books, they're calling it an unidentified skeleton that's of alien origin or something like that. We don't know. We're not making any such claims, but we're throwing it out there, hoping that if any of you guys have any information about that, you would share, give us your opinions or anything like that. Because, and what really sets this apart for me, everyone knows stories like weird things are a dime a dozen on the internet. But this buddy of mine here, I've known him for a long time. He doesn't make stuff up, and he's the one that brought this to my attention. And when you know somebody that actually had their hands on something like this, it really puts it in a new perspective. So
it's definitely one of the strangest things that's ever come across my path. Like I said, when he told me about it, I thought, okay, whatever, it's going to be some dead animal, and then when I saw it, I was like, wow, this is, never seen anything like this before. So
one person asked me, he said, well, could it be a mountain lion? So what I've done is all the things that people have suggested. I mean, anybody, you can go on the internet and pull up pictures of skeletons of just about anything. And it's the cranium in the back, it's just not it's not a mountain lion, I don't believe. And the other things that was suggested, I'd follow up on, and I can't find a match for it. So, like I say, not saying what it is, just saying we don't know what it is, and I would sure like to know. Is there anything else you want to add to this? Or?
The only thing I was thinking is, I wish whoever took these pictures, of course, they laid it out, to get a full side. I wish they would have gotten a front view of it, especially the skull, because it does have a very humanoid kind of an appearance to it, with the exception of the eye sockets. The orbs were kind of far apart, but other than that, I mean, I wish they would have had a better picture of that, but definitely strange.
Yeah, it's one of those things that have disappeared that we had wish wasn't.
Right.
But anyway, I guess we're going to call it with that. Like I say, if anybody has any information about this, please do get in contact. Put it in the comments or send me an email, because this is something Steve and I have talked about over the years several times and wondered whatever happened with it. But that I read in another article again where these pictures came from, that the teeth reminded them of something that would belong on a chainsaw or something. It doesn't look like an herbivore's teeth with those points. It doesn't look like anything else I've ever seen.
That's what I'm saying. To me, out of the whole strangeness of not knowing what it is, that's what stood out to me, was the teeth. I was like, wow, they didn't even look real. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. So, just because they're so different looking. But. So,
what we got here, we got a humanoid looking skull. We had a fin on its back, as Steve said, was reminiscent of like a fish would have on its back, yet it had a strange kind of hair still left in the flesh of its skull. So we don't know if it was quadruped or biped. If anybody knows more about the skeletal anatomy by looking at the pictures I posted in the community tab and stuff, I'm all ears. I want to hear what you guys got to say, and I guess we're going to call it with that. And I'd like to thank Steve for taking the time to do this. I hung out at the store late tonight waiting for him to get through the guitar lesson so we could come out here and talk about this. So, all right, well, that's it. Okay, I want to add this to the end of the interview that I just did with Steve. I noticed when we were looking back over it, we didn't spend much time showing the picture except for the teeth he drew, and I was going to just hold these up. Now, this is picture number 1, which shows the side view of the skull and the down to the rib cage. Leave that up for just a little bit. And this is the other one. Like I say, these were from those books on treasure hunting, and this is side view of the skull all the way down to the pelvis and the spine and all, as you can see there. And this right here is, once again, this is the molar that Steve was from memory drew at the store just here about an hour ago, I guess. So anyway, just wanted to edit this part in here to put a little more time showing the pictures there. So until next time, thanks for watching.